Right, so it is day 61 of my New Year's planting. The sun is out, my camera has battery, so let's get on with it. Right, so today's planting is consisting of two different trees. So first up, we're going to be putting in a macadamia, which is grown from seed. Now, there are about 10 seeds going in with it that haven't yet germinated. These were soaked overnight when I first got them until they split, and then put in a Ziploc bag with some soil. And one of them's been coming up, and it's been coming up quite well. And I'm assuming the rest aren't fertile, because generally speaking I would have expected them to come up by now. But with macadamias, sometimes they come up a very long time apart, even if they're from the same sort of round of fruiting. So I'm going to leave those in the soil there, and if they do come up, I'll prick them up gently and move them elsewhere, because they can germinate a long time afterwards. As with a lot of large seeded fruits, you never really know when it's done. So around that, I'm going to be putting in some Calico delagoensis, which is a very misleadingly named calico because Delagoa is Mozambique, and this is from Madagascar originally. But it's quite a good one to plant around macadamias because they tend to attract away from the macadamia and towards themselves some of the pests that can damage the nut itself of the macadamia. I'm putting in some Dracaena reflexa as well as a marker, and as a shelter, because I do find young macadamias are very, very prone to sunburn. I have lost them in the past for being too exposed to the sun, and so hopefully having a little bit of extra shelter from those, even though it's in a moderately shady spot to begin with, that should just give it a little bit more of a head start and allow it to thrive. I'm putting in an aloe whose name I do not know, because it's one I've grown from cutting that I took from someone else's garden, and I have never seen it flower, so I haven't been able to pin a name down to it. You do find a lot of people will call their aloes aloe vera, because they are a true aloe. That is not what that means, that is a species. I'm also going to be putting in a small clivia, which is a type of native lily-like plant. It's in the Amaryllidaceae. Unlike a lot of the Amaryllidaceae, it doesn't have a bulb, which I think is an adaptation to mole rats, and it doesn't seem to be affected by mole rats. This is relatively close to the crinum, so there is a chance that the Britys crini, which affects the crinum and sort of eats them down to just the bulb every year, will affect it, but I've never found them to be a problem on it before. This is actually one that's been split off from one I grew from seed that was given to me by my step-grandmother in South Africa, which was very kind of her. It tends to have an orange-yellow flower. It's a very pretty one, and again, it's moderately toxic, so it should act as part of the barrier to anything damaging my plant. And there's a little barrier to convince the pouched rats they're not going to dig up and eat my macadamia seedling, because it does still have the fleshy nut part attached to the base of it, about 10 centimeters underground once it's gone in. I am putting in 3 pieces of one of the Dracaena sansevieria types. Can't actually remember the name of it. It's one I put in recently, and it is a native one, so I will pop that up on the screen. So the second plant going in today is a rose apple, which is a type of Syzygium, so the same genus as the waterberry. This is actually not a native one, so this is Syzygium jambos, I think. It'll be up on the screen. It has a much longer, thinner leaf than any of the native waterberries, and it was quite distinctive when I saw the seedling coming up under one of the mango trees. Now, generally speaking, when you see a tree seedling coming up, it does mean, oh, this is a good place for a tree to be. But unfortunately, there's also the convenience factor, and sometimes when something is just too close to a trunk, you know that that is not going to be ideal for your access to the trees. And also, I know this species doesn't fruit very well if it's in too much shade, so as much as they germinate better with a lot of shade, they do want sun to fruit, and I don't necessarily want it to be taller than and shading out my mango trees, so I'm moving it to a slightly more open location next to this avocado tree that is sheltering my riverine thicket Mark II. Now, in with that, because I want access to the pot and because it's definitely healthy enough to be planted out at this point, I'm putting some turmeric, which is Curcuma longa, which is a South Asian plant, so it's from the same sort of area as the rose apple. And then I'm putting in some Dietes iridoides, which should be a nice toxic barrier, so that's one of the native irises, the one that tends to walk as it flowers. It produces new bulbs at the ends of the stem, well, rhizomes at the end of the stem that then fall down and grow up. And then I'm putting in another 3 Dracaena reflexa, because again, this started in very deep shade, and so I don't want it getting sunburned while it's settling in. And I'm putting in some Aloe Cameroni as another physical barrier, just to keep this protected and a little bit sheltered while it's settling in. This one actually does tie to why I plant so many fruit trees. So this was brought here by a fruit bat, and that's one of the things I like about fruit trees, is they attract fruit-eating animals, which sure, eat and damage your fruit, but they tend to bring the seeds of other fruits that you might not have planted. There are various fruit trees that need to go through the guts of various animals to germinate, and so it's really handy having something that draws in animals that, well, basically poop out more fruit trees. And this probably wasn't pooped out. The seed's relatively large, so unless it was maybe a straw-coloured fruit bat, I don't think it would have gone through the gut. I think it would have been carried and then eaten in the tree and then dropped, and the seed has come up. But even so, it's a good demonstration of, you know, plant fruit trees to get more fruit trees. Trees breed trees. A tree alone isn't really a tree. And with that sort of half-baked philosophy out of the way, that is everything for today. So thank you very much for watching. Please tune in again tomorrow. And we will see what I'm planting then.